Okay, we've done our research. We've studied the role, we've studied the manager, we've studied the company, and now after 2 sections, we've studied ourselves to understand what it is we want. And now it's time to craft the questions that we want to bring to the interview with us. And it's very important. Every interview you go on, you need to be prepared with questions. I cannot tell you how many interviews I've conducted where there were no questions asked by the candidates. You need to show your interest level, and you need to bring your questions, because the questions will tell things about you that are important in what you're trying to understand. And it helps them understand who you are better. So let's talk about crafting the questions. So by the end of this lesson, you will craft your questions for the interview, and you'll identify the things that are most important. You're going to rank these questions that way, in case you run out of time, the ones that are most important to you get asked first. So, what do you wish you had known? So before taking the job you have right now, what do you wish you had asked? If you're not learning from experience on this, it's awful that you're not, because you want to correct the things that have happened to you in the past. So think of every job you've ever had. What is it you wish you would have known about ahead of time, and make sure you understand that the best you can before you go to work at this new company. So you want to, and you also want to think ahead to your future. Where do you think you might want to be in a couple of years? Are you taking this job thinking, I want a growth path? Make sure you have that question. If that's a possibility or a desire, or even a possible desire, put it down. If you want to go back to school to get your MBA, or you want just upward mobility, or you want to be able to transition within the company. I get bored easily. I want to be able to change from group to group. Talk to them about that. Make sure your questions are outlined so that you can help them understand why you're asking that question, and make sure you're asking that question. So the role, let's start there. What would be the most helpful thing for you to understand? We've read the job description. We're making no assumptions, even if this is a common role, a common term. I've never known an office manager as a common item, as a common role. I've never known an office manager to have the same duties at every place I've worked. Every place I've worked, the office manager just has different responsibilities to the office. You need to understand what those are for you. So don't assume anything. And what would be the most important thing in 1 year? So in a year from now, what would be the most important thing that you think you'd want to know about in this organization? You're trying to think ahead to the future, and so we're going to use that year marker, because it's very hard to think 5 years in advance. A lot changes in 5 years. But in 1 year, you typically know where you're going to be a year from now and what you want to understand. Again, make no assumptions on the role. You've read the job description. If anything could be taken out of context or mean something different, ask for clarification to make sure that you don't miss anything. The manager. What matters most about this? Is there upward mobility, and do you care? Is there an opportunity to take this person's job? Are they trying to bring somebody in that they can groom? You may want to understand that if upward mobility is key for you. And it may be key for you to help them understand you want upward mobility if they are going to be threatened by you in that role. It'd be good to go ahead and get that out of the way now and not worry about it a year from now when you're saying, hey, I'd like to promote, and they're going, well, this person's a problem. Find out what you need to understand most about this manager, and make sure that question is written down and crafted. And we're going to talk about that here in a little bit, about what that needs to look like. What is the most important thing about belonging to this company? Is it the mission and vision? Is it salary and benefits? Believe it or not, I've known more people that care about the commute more than they think about anything else. Hey, that's not me. I'm not judging. People are people. If that's important to you, make sure it gets on the list. I'm not here to judge what you're putting on the list. Make sure that what's important to you makes the list. It's what's important to you, not what I think should be important to you. So get those things on the list. Whether or not that company supports education, pays for the education, sustainability. More people are worried about, is your company green these days? Charity, who do you give back to? Who do you support? If you don't give back to anybody or support anybody, maybe that's not a company I want to work for. I've had a lot of people take different stances in these areas. Make sure you understand what's most important to you. And if you weren't able to get clarification off of your research, ask those questions now. Please tell me more about the commute. Can I work from home? Do I need to be in this office? Is there an office closer to me? Do you pay for education if I want to go back for my MBA? Do you, or just continuing education courses? What is your company sustainable? Whatever is important to you, craft that question and make sure that you're ready to get it answered. It matters. If it's important to you, it matters. So make sure you get that question answered. Okay. So now let's build our questions. So write down the initial questions from the previous slides that you have. Just write them down. Don't worry about what they sound like. We're just getting them written down about what we're trying to get answered so that we don't forget. But then, now that we've got them written down, we want to edit them with an eye for what they say about you. And what I mean by that is you're going to read it as though you're not you. What do you think is implied about you in that question? Because you really don't want any implication. You don't want somebody to assume that you're just out for, let's use the education. Hey, I'd like to go back and get my MBA. Is that something that the company will pay for? Well, you don't want to read that how you write it down. It may read and sound to the employer like you're just looking for a handout or you're looking for them to pay for your education and then you're going to leave. That's not the way you want to communicate that. So what you want to do is edit that question down to where it sounds the way you want it to sound and mean what you want it to mean. It's very important to have a third party, a friend, a colleague, somebody else read that question or ask them that question. Hey, let me ask you this question. You tell me what that says about me. And have them help you also edit it. A couple of edit passes are very worthwhile for you to make sure that the question is so finely tuned down that you can get it to read exactly the way you want it to with the meaning you want. And this is very important because I've had people that are lazy with this piece and they'll ask questions and they come off sound and they haven't rehearsed it and then they kind of shock them. They do this where they ask a question, their eyes get, oh my gosh, I asked that and that sounded weird. And then they spend so much going back trying to give more context to what they were trying to ask, and something that should have been a brief question turns into this ridiculous waste of time in the interview, and it's usually over something that's not even that key anyway. You're just trying to get understanding, and then you showed that your communication skills are subpar by how you went about asking it. So take the time to have good communication skills here and have a well-edited question that's written down, ready to present in the way you want it to be presented. Wordsmith, your first pass will not be the best pass. I promise you, promise you, promise you. I have so many people that think they're just geniuses and as soon as they write it down, it's gold. No, it's not. You can always improve it and make it better. Now, don't go the other direction and get crazy where you have 400 edits of the same question. Make sure you've edited it. Make sure a friend or a third party, a colleague, a spouse, somebody else besides you has also edited it. And make sure that it reads briefly, succinctly, and gets the message you're trying to get and the intent and context, if possible, through on the question. If you wordsmith it and spend a little bit of time with it, 5 minutes seems like so much at a moment, but 5 minutes will make that question a very impressive question when it's well thought out. The interviewer knows. If every single question you said was brief, concise, and to the point, they are going to be very impressed with your communication skills and how you came across in that interview. So spend the time here. So in conclusion, you know what matters most to you. You just spent several research sections on the company, the manager, the role, and yourself, that you've done all this research. You know what matters. So now you need to put it in a context and a format that matters, that makes the most sense and shows you've thought about these things and you know what you're looking for, and now you want to understand, is this the company that's going to deliver that to me? And now we're starting to get out of the scarcity principle of, well, all I care about is getting this job, to I'm interviewing you as much as you're interviewing me. So your action item, draft at least 3 questions for the interview. You probably don't need to go in with more than 5 unless there's just a lot of questions that you couldn't gain insight from your research. So have at least 3 questions ready to go, and when you think they're good, send them to somebody else for feedback. That way you can make them better.